You are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop Podcast, episode 123 of the College Loop Podcast. I am Dylan Larck at your tank on Twitter/X, and I'm here joined today, Mr. Daniel Locke. Daniel, how you doing, buddy?
Dylan, I'm doing pretty good. I was at tip-off today, my SEC Men's Basketball Media Days. Heading back tomorrow for the women's edition, so a little tired, but just ready to get into it. Talk some Auburn sports.
Yeah, and I know how excited we all are to talk about some Auburn football because this is probably been the heaviest quarterback discussion I've seen amongst the Auburn fans since the preseason. I think it's reached its peak after Payton Thorne went in against LSU against a defense that ranked 114 in the country against the pass, and Payton Thorne went out there and threw for 102 yards.
Yeah.
And just overall, it's just everyone has been at each other's throats so much so that people are trying to call the Auburn fan base just toxic in general, which every fan base is going to be toxic to a certain extent. I mean, if you look across the state, they were toxic about Milroe, Buckner, and Ty Simpson. The other side of the other state next to us, they were upset about who was going to start between Carson Beck and Brock Vandegrift. It's just something that happens everywhere, and I think I don't think it got out of hand. I just think people kind of got upset because you had the people who were like pro Robby, kind of saying, like me, that he can't be worse than what Payton Thorne is, and you have the guys who are still on the Payton Thorne side saying, "Shut up, you just don't like Payton Thorne because you like Robby so much, so just keep it like it's got it." And then you have like the minority of people who were just give Holden Geriner a shot, which I always found that a weird argument to make, just kind of throwing him out there.
Yeah, I mean, just the way I see it, if they were to try out Holden Geriner, there's just no way that yields a good result right now. I was pretty strongly in favor of Thorne in the beginning, mainly because of what he did at Michigan State, particularly in 2021. I've switched sides kind of. I would prefer to see Robby at this point because just Robby's got the more advanced skill set. Robby can extend plays better. And like you said, I don't think he can be any worse.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been the most open, and I think you can also agree with this. I've been the most open about who I want at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I've probably been the most open Auburn fan about who I've wanted at quarterback for the longest time. And I only wavered once. That's when I thought Grayson McCall was going to transfer to Auburn. And then as soon as that didn't happen, back on the Robby train. And then I was voted president of the Robby Ashford fan club. And again, if anybody wants to join, all you have to do, if you hated on Robby Ashford before, just a lengthy apology saying that I was right, you were wrong, and then you can be admitted to the club as well and help us get a quarterback who can move the ball down the field. But Daniel, I'm going to ask you this question. Who out of these three or out of these two gives Auburn the best chance to get the upset over Ole Miss on Saturday?
Honestly, I think it's Robby Ashford. With Payton Thorne, there's just enough film on the many things that will just make him crumble out there now. With Robby Ashford, there's not really nearly as much film from this season. So, yeah, I think you get Robby in there. I think you can run a lot of like some option, like RPO, some play action kind of stuff, and just kind of see what happens. And in the unlikely event that it is somehow worse than what Payton Thorne's been doing, I guess you can go back, but I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, and you bring up the RPOs. That's an offense that we have continuously heard Hugh Freeze say that him and Phil Montgomery both want to run more and more every single week. If the offense isn't working, it's going to be more enough RPOs. If the offense is working, it's going to ran the right amount of RPOs. And 3 games in a row, it has been we didn't run the RPO enough. We didn't run the RPO enough. And then he said we didn't run the RPO well enough. And I think Hugh Freeze said, I believe it was, we ran the RPO well until they started guarding the boundary.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he said in the presser. Which, in that point, shouldn't the whole thing about the RPO being if they start defending one side of the option, you choose the other option?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, that's what the O means in an RPO. It means the option. And that just makes no sense to me. From a guy that has been praised for his veteran presence and how much of a captain, and I think they messed up. I think it's one of the flaws that Hugh Freeze did was giving, and I respect the fact that Payton Thorne came into Auburn and immediately started trying to know everybody and trying to get in touch with the team and kind of try to do stuff off season. And I guess in the offseason, he earned that C on his chest. But I think it was one of the biggest flaws of the offseason for Hugh Freeze. Now the hindsight's 2020. I don't think he should have got that captain on his chest if we knew this was going to happen. And now it's kind of hard to bench a guy who you have as a team captain because now you feel a sense of, I don't want to say pride about it, but it kind of is about the fact that you gave a guy who just transferred in this letter and now he has not played up to what you expect. You have players who are tweeting out that they want Robby to play. And that's me assuming what that one tweet meant. And I mean, it was a statement said, a very short number statement, but a statement nonetheless. I just think that that's where he messed up. And I know people were saying all this other stuff. They're like assuming that someone's like has dirt or something, like something's going on behind the scenes that we just don't know about. I think that's a load of BS. I just think that I think whenever you give someone that high of a status on the team, it's kind of hard to get them take a step back from where they are on the team. Like I don't think we're going to see Elijah McAllister take a couple steps back on the team, even though Jaylin McLeod is back healthy or in the process of getting healthier because he has that C on his chest. I think that's where Hugh Freeze really messed up. And now he has to sit and think about the fact that, can I bench this guy that I made a team captain for a guy who has proven that he can move my offense better than Payton Thorne can in Robby Ashford? And I just don't understand I understand Hugh Freeze is here to rebuild Auburn. That is exactly what he was hired here to do. He is here to bring Auburn back to the top of the SEC and of the sport like Auburn has been in the past. And Auburn, again, is a top 15 program all time and should be a national championship contender at least every year. At the bare minimum, missing like 1 year where they're not. But every year, Auburn should be in the conversation to be a contender in the national realm. And that's where Hugh Freeze wants to take this team. But I think in the process of doing a rebuild, you kind of forget the fact that it doesn't hurt to lose. It doesn't hurt to win some in your first year. Like I've been a big component of, I don't like whenever teams have first year success at times because that usually does more harm to your program than it helps because some coaches do have that great first year and then they just fall off tremendously. I mean, look at Sam Pittman at Arkansas. Shane Beamer has been overachieving at South Carolina. Now people are kind of faulting on him. And then you have TCU last year, and then they fall off. And now you have fans who are expecting more and more after they had that first taste of success. And now you're sitting here like, can I bench my guy for a guy who can possibly win more games? Because like I asked this question to you because people probably won't know your answer, Daniel. But whenever this question gets asked to me, people already know who I'm going to say is going to give Auburn the better chance to win. It's Robby Ashford, strictly because we saw what he did against LSU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And going back to the captain thing, like the players do vote on that. So Payton Thorne just really earned the trust of the players, like his teammates. And I feel like in a way, this is when you really show it. If you do end up getting benched and you still have the same like positive attitude, like trying to uplift everyone, then yeah, I feel like you really do deserve to be a team captain at that point. But But yeah, I agree with what you said. It is still hard to bench a team captain.
Yeah.
You probably won't see that happen at a lot of other positions. So I'm kind of with you on that.
Yeah, and against Georgia, I was watching on TV, and I vaguely remember, and by vaguely I mean I very much remember, a certain sound coming from the stadium whenever they announced Payton Thorne as the starting quarterback. And I believe it was boos. A lot of booing coming. What are the odds if Payton Thorne gets announced as a starting quarterback versus Ole Miss that the fan base, all 87,000, I don't know if they all 87,000, let's say a good chunk, let's say like 83,000. I'll give Ole Miss fans benefit of the doubt. They'll travel pretty well. You have 4,000 fans. What are the odds that we're going to hear boos across Geriner Stadium?
I feel like it'll be like a couple thousand from the student section. But just kind of my stance on it, like as a fan, even though like I'm not like when I'm at the games, with the exception of last weekend, I'm not a fan. Like I'm there to report on the game, but I'm not going to boo my own team. Just as a matter of principle, like that's my team. Doesn't mean I can't criticize. Doesn't mean I won't criticize. But like I'm not going to boo somebody who is on my team. But I think there might be some audible booing.
Yeah, because I know I've never booed Auburn, but I've done a couple of "come on, man" or some of the "what are we doing?" that kind of stuff. Like I think that if Auburn wants the best chance to get the upset over Ole Miss in a game that I think, and I understand year one, and I might be booging a little bit. I'm going to leave the glasses over there because they're retired until basketball season or until Hugh Freeze proves me wrong. I think this is a must-win game, strictly because of the storylines all coming together at the right moment. You just had an absolute god-awful performance. I don't care year one. I understand what I said earlier about you can't win a lot in year one or harm your team, but you can't have games like that. At least whenever I look at like the A&M loss, Auburn wasn't completely out of that game defensively, but the offense kind of made that game seem like it was more of a blowout than it was. And then you have the Georgia game where it was very competitive till the last couple minutes of the game. Well, down to the wire, actually. I'm just going to go into say the entire game. That game was competitive. And then you had a game against the worst defense in the SEC, and then you go around and play like that. Like that's gonna hurt the morale, even if it's a year one coach. I mean, you're not gonna hear me say it because I don't believe this whatsoever. You have people who are out there saying that Auburn should fire Hugh Freeze after year one because of that LSU loss, and that's like what's the negative of booging? Is there like an opposite of that?
I have no clue.
Let's say overreacting. I guess that works about a loss. I mean, this Auburn team clearly not going to finish in the top 3 in the SEC West.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even top 4. I mean, we're looking at a season where we might find a way to mess around and get 7 wins if we can get the wins that we need. I think that this game outside of the Iron Bowl is the most important game on the schedule.
I agree.
And for recruiting purposes, probably the most important game again outside the Iron Bowl for recruiting, because I've heard there's going to be a lot of players at this game.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps the night game too.
I agree.
Because night games of Jordan-Hare tend to get a little wacky. But with this game, Auburn is currently a 6.5-point dog, I believe. Last time I checked, that was true. And let me just check that to make sure. Yeah, 6.5-point dog to Ole Miss, and they're in Jordan-Hare Stadium at 6:00. Who needs to ball out the most in your eyes for Auburn to get this upset over a top 15 team?
On the offense, I'm going to go with really the whole receiver core, particularly Rivaldo Fairweather. Fairweather is expected to be one of Auburn's top targets every week, and I really think he needs to step up, get open, make some plays. And on the defensive side, I'm going to go to Marcus Harris. Rush defense is going to be absolutely essential this week. This is the best running back you've faced all season. so far and probably will be the best running back you faced all year. So that run defense has got to be the best it's been. And I really feel like that starts with one of the best defensive linemen in the country in Marcus Harris.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to your point about Rivaldo Fairweather, I mean, Auburn had their worst offensive showcase thus far this season, and Rivaldo Fairweather only got one catch. And as that should never be the case for any Auburn offense this season. There should never be a time where Rivaldo Fairweather does not potentially just lead Auburn in receiving yards and lead Auburn in receptions in general. And I love Brendan Frazier had a come out party, 3 catches of 52 yards. I mean, there was a tight end that got up there, and I completely agree with the whole wide receiver core. I mean, we every week it's the same old. We preach and preach and preach about how talented this wide receiver room is, and then they just don't show up. I mean, Shane Hooks didn't register a single catch against LSU. He got a target, and it was a pass interference bait, but didn't get a single catch. Jay Fair only had 36 yards on 3 catches. I mean, you need to prove this wide receiver core is worth it, and the only way to do that is to have the right guy at quarterback. Like I have chosen Robby Ashford as my player who needs the ball out, and I just remember I forgot to change the little sidebar over there. There we go. Robby Ashford needs to come in and prove not only me right, but prove the fact that he is going to be the guy going the rest of the season. He is the guy who can move this offense like Phil Montgomery and Hugh Freeze said they want to move it. And I've done some research on Ole Miss's defense. They are good at stopping the run, not so good at stopping the pass. But if you watch the last week's game, that doesn't matter with Payton Thorne. He underperformed against the worst passing defense in the SEC, and now he's going to be playing against the 5th worst passing defense in the SEC. And I just think that's going to start with starting Robby Ashford. That's going to be the X factor. They're only allowing 126 yards on the ground per game. That's 8th in the SEC. If you can run the ball, you can pass the ball in this game. And I think you can only do both those things if you have Robby Ashford quarterback. And on defense, I'm going to go with the guy who needs to step up from his last game performance. I think Larry Nixon III had a very poor show out versus LSU. And yes, you're playing against possibly a historically great offense with a potentially historically bad defense. It might be the biggest, the most mismatched team in college football history is this LSU team. Like a god-awful defense, awesome offense. And Larry Nixon did not have a great game. He had 4 tackles, which I think was 4th or 5th on the team or something along those lines. But overall, I just did not really see him do anything that proved that he needs to be the starter right now. And Nixon is at a stretch of 3 games where he did very, very well. And we still don't know when we're going to see Austin Keys. I believe we're thinking either next week or a week or 2, I believe. I think he finally got out of the cast this past week. So now Mississippi State maybe, like a hard maybe. And then I think Arkansas is going to be leaning toward the yes side, I believe. Would I be right in thinking that?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and Larry Nixon, he's a guy who's, and I mean Vanderbilt, not Arkansas. We play Vanderbilt first. I get those 2 games get mixed up to me. But Larry Nixon, he had a very poor showing out in the pass coverage game. There were a couple of plays where he just looked silly, and he just didn't make plays we needed to, and he didn't stop the run very well like he's supposed to. He's a run-stuffing linebacker who got thrown in the coverage plays. That's just not what you want to do scheme-wise, and I just think he's going to have to really come out this game and prove once again that he is a starter and he deserves to be a starter on this team and deserves to have a good role on this team whenever Auburn finally gets healthy at linebacker, and that just means getting Austin Keys back. That way you have a nice little interchangeable linebacker core that's worth the crap in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
And just to get some news out of the way, Jaylin Simpson has been named a midseason AP All-American for his outstanding start to the season. He is currently, I believe, is he still first in interceptions?
I believe so.
I could probably find that. But yeah, Jaylin Simpson has been absolutely popping off this season. He is currently going up draft boards as is what I've been reading, and the Senior Bowl has been like lights out about him, and they have just been elated by how he has been performing thus far. And I think he is tied for fourth, but he has the second most interceptions in the country. That's because you have three guys with 5, and then you have three guys with 4. So yeah, he is currently tied for fourth in the country in interceptions, and that is good for second in the SEC. And Jaylin Simpson just absolutely showing out. And I just want to say, of all my takes that I've had for the Auburn football season, Jaylin Simpson having a season like this, I called that all along. So I'm getting my flowers a little bit. But yeah, Jaylin Simpson, shout out to him. Hopefully this continues and he gets a nice little All-American after the season as well, and hopefully get some more flowers for being an absolutely awesome defensive back. But with the offenses coming up, and hopefully he gets back to full health against Ole Miss, or at least gets back to full health this week for Ole Miss and throughout the rest of the season. So potentially we can see him win some kind of national award, but that might be a stretch for me to say that right now. And speaking of potential stretches, Auburn is in the race for a 5-star defensive lineman for the class of 2024, L.J. McCray. We talked about him a few times on the show before. He has currently announced he's going to announce his commitment on Saturday. I don't believe he has a time selected yet. It just kind of says the 24/7 that he's announcing all right, so he's going to be announcing at 4:00 on Saturday. So 2 hours before the Auburn game. L.J. McCray, 6'6", 260 pounds, currently a 5-star player, number 2 defensive lineman in the country, number 3 player in the state of Florida, and overall the number 6 player in the country. And L.J. McCray, just an absolute dog of a player. I mean, he is just lighting up recruiting boards off the rip. He's a big athlete, athletic defensive lineman who is going to hopefully fight his way in the plains, but I'm not too sure of that quite yet.
Yeah, I mean Auburn, Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Miami. He's from Daytona Beach, so I feel like that automatically gives Florida, Florida State, and Miami a leg up. As long as he doesn't pick Georgia over Auburn, I'm fine. I mean, this is one that the fact that Auburn is in the running for a guy like this, at this point, he's the way the 247's rankings currently stand. This is the second top 10 recruit in this class that Auburn's been really close to landing if they don't get him. Or if they do end up landing him, like that's a top 10 recruit. I feel like at that point, the recruiting efforts are even further ahead of where we thought they were. Because the trenches desperately need some work. And I have a feeling that that LJ would be a guy. He's a day one starter. Definitely if he comes to Auburn, and probably at most of these places on here, except for I wouldn't be shocked if he's not a day one starter at Georgia. But the other schools, I think he would be. And I feel like that's attractive for a lot of guys. So, and additionally, McCray was at the Georgia game. So that was a great recruiting weekend for Auburn. So I would, if I had to like put a level of like a crystal ball-esque level of confidence on this, it'd be like a 4. For if he was going to come to Auburn. So basically, I think there's like a 30 to 40% chance. I feel like it's going to be one of those Florida schools. I feel like,
Yeah.
but I don't think he's going to go to Georgia. So I think basically to sum it up, I think he's either going to come to Auburn or he's going to stay home.
Yeah, and him not going to Georgia is a bit of a moral victory in and of itself because,
sure,
I mean this Georgia recruiting class right now is absolutely ridiculous. If I do say so myself, it is currently the number 1 class in the country, and it is Still picking up 5 stars of the 5 stars of the 5 stars. I know Florida State fans are pretty confident in this. I've heard some Miami fans are pretty confident. So, I mean, our confidence level could just be the fact that we're also covering Auburn. So, I mean, I can say I feel confident level of 10. I'm not going to say that. I would probably go like where you said, probably a 2 or a 3 on my confidence level. I've heard good things. Auburn's right up there in the mix with these schools who are all recruiting powerhouses. And that just shows, again, what Hugh Freeze is doing for the recruiting for Auburn, something that a walking potato was not able to accomplish at Auburn, and something Gus Malzahn was not able to do in his last few years on the Plains. But, I mean, just the fact that Auburn is within grasp of a top 10 player for, like you said, the second time in this recruiting cycle is absolutely ridiculous. And I would absolutely love it if Elgin McCray found his way in the navy and burnt orange going into next year. But speaking of a potential pickup for the class of 2024, talk about a decommitment of the class of 2024. Jaden Lewis becomes the second defensive back decommitment of the 2024 class. A couple days after Jalewis Solomon announced his decommitment and that he committed almost immediately to South Carolina. Jaden Lewis, the athletic corner / wide receiver from, I forgot where he's from as I'm saying that, Anniston. I get Fat Burnett went to Andalusia and Jaden Lewis went to Anniston, and I get those two confused all the time because that first syllable. But Jaden Lewis, the athletic wide receiver / cornerback combo, has been killing it all year. And I believe Coach Crime Dog and Zach Etheridge were both very adamant on trying to get him in whenever he was first in the recruitment phase of his before he committed to Auburn, trying to get him to play a little bit of corner mostly. But he recently announced that he'll be decommitting. He thanks Coach Crime Dog and Auburn and he Freeze for recruiting him, but now it's back open. I'm not going to hit the panic button on this. I think if I were to give it like a red light, green light kind of situation, I'd probably give it like a yellow-ish. Like a very, very like close to green. You're going to lose guys in a class like this.
Especially one when your class is so loaded at one position with a bunch of guys who are really similar. When you like, it kind of goes back to like what I was saying about like LJ McCray, pretty much wherever he goes, he'll be a day one starter. Jaden Lewis probably was not going to be a day one starter. If he had been a day one starter, something's gone wrong with guys like Kay and Lee and, you know, stuff like that. Guys who we think are going to be really, really good. So my guess is he was like, I'm probably not going to play here till I'm a junior at the earliest. I want to play now. So I'm going to go somewhere I can.
Yeah, and I mean, if you just look at the class, Auburn still has Amon Lane and Jalen Crawford on this team, and Kinsley Foston still committed. I mean, Auburn still has some very, very good defensive backs, and even to like Elgin McCray's side, I mean, Auburn still has defensive linemen like Blockton and TJ Lindsey from IMG, and I believe Demetrius Nicholas and I think DJ Barber plays a little bit of edge mostly as well. I mean, Hugh Freeze has found ways to load up on certain positions in this recruiting cycle. And losing one or two is like, okay, for a position that Auburn's very loaded at now and will be loaded at in the future and is currently loaded at in their recruiting cycle. So, again, I'm not going to hit the panic button quite yet. I think it'd be a little silly to. You can be – I don't even say you should be cautiously pessimistic. I think that's even going too far. You're gonna. It happens to everybody. Even like Alabama and Georgia lose commits. Like it's not something that's new to anyone. And just I just think everyone's kind of overreacting a little bit. If we start losing like commit like that, then yeah, hit the panic button because something's going very, very wrong. But you lose two guys at positions that you're already loaded at, will be loaded at, and already recruiting to be loaded at in the future. I mean, I think you're fine. But Daniel, I will say, all these people hating on Hugh Freeze and his recruiting cycle and his recruiting class has got me feeling a certain way. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would agree.
It's got me feeling a little loopy. And Daniel, what if I told you that we have the perfect shirt for that feeling?
I would want to buy it.
Well, my friend, you should go over to thewarreport.com and get your own Feeling Loopy shirt today. Only $25 on the War Report shop. It is the Feeling Loopy t-shirts, Feelin, Feeling Loopy shirts. And I believe whenever I wear this shirt, I feel the most comfortable that I have ever felt in my life. I sleep in this shirt. I wear this shirt everywhere. This shirt's awesome. And for like $25, you too can have this very, very comfortable shirt. It's perfect for game days. It's perfect for formal events. It's perfect for literally everything you could possibly go to if you want it. So go to thewarporter.com. You can also click the link in the description below to get your you can get your College Loop branded Feeling Loopy t-shirt today. And when you do get it, use hashtag Feeling Loopy on Twitter or Instagram. We'll find you and we will shout you out on these shows. Get your own Feeling Loopy shirt today. Daniel, yesterday was SEC tip-off for men's basketball, and you were there in person for that. So just let us know how'd it go.
It went pretty good. I got there not pretty early this morning. I got there about 9:30 or so because I wanted to hear what Coach Beard had to say at Ole Miss, and more so what he had to say about Wes and Alan Flanagan. And then I wanted to catch up with former Auburn Tiger Alan Flanagan and pick his brain on a couple things, mainly his transition to Oxford. And I asked if there were some things he missed about, Coach Pearl and being on the Plains. So that went pretty good. Got some good stuff there. Then I just kind of got some work knocked out until about 3 o'clock when Bruce Pearl took the stage.
And did Al Flanagan say anything particular about what he missed about Auburn? I mean, just the campus,
He said the Auburn
trees.
family.
That's good. That's a good answer, especially because you're not going to get that family environment from Ole Miss. I must say so myself. But from what I've been hearing, there was not a lot that was not already known said.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of Aiden Holloway talk, since I believe he's going to be the starting point guard this year. Strictly because you can't not start Aiden Holloway, and you're really going to get a lot of Trey Donaldson as well. And Bruce Pearl even came out and said quarterback play is pretty important in the SEC, and that's the only position we're young at, and they can both shoot it well as any point guard that I've had. The question will be if they can play make as well. And when he says quarterback there, he means point guard, because basically that's the quarterback of a basketball team. But yeah, Aiden Holloway and Trey Donaldson probably going to be the best 1-2 combo of a starter and backup. You're going to get like a double quarterback scheme whenever you hit to play the Auburn Tigers. And I mean, you can't even forget the fact that this transfer portal class has been absolutely ridiculous from what we've been hearing, at least from practices. But yeah, was there anything that Bruce Pearl, Jay Will, and Janai Brim said?
Jay Will and Janai are ready to play. And this was Bruce Pearl's, I think, 4th total time addressing the media so far. I guess if we can say season now. So it's just kind of been the same song and dance every time. Went and got some guys out of the portal. He expects them to be pretty good from multiple levels. Brought in D1 portal guys, D2 portal guys, and a JUCO portal guy. So Bruce Pearl's confident in what he was able to do, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this team take the floor against Baylor on November 7th.
As we're recording this, I mean, Auburn's 2 weeks away from their exhibition game against AUM.
Yep.
And then after that, 6 days away from the first game of the season against Baylor, who is only, I believe, 3 years out of winning their national championship.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 or 3?
21 to 22 is 1 year, 22 to 23. Like 2 years.
2 years. Yeah. Gotcha. Well, yeah. And it's going to be that game is going to be in South Dakota, I believe. And and then Auburn comes back to the Nev to play Southeastern Louisiana on November 10th. So get your tickets to that, because you do not want to miss a single game of what's going to be an awesome season. And it seems that the SEC media doesn't really think that highly of this Auburn basketball team. And by that, I mean they were picked to finish sixth, or they're projected the sixth best team in the SEC. And I think that is absolutely blasphemous.
Yeah, but the other team in the state was picked 5, so you just can't really put a lot of stock in that. I would prefer to be 6th in the preseason poll than finish in 6th place.
Yeah, and I guess my thing about it being blasphemous is I can understand but I can understand Kentucky and Arkansas being up there. I can understand A&M because they loaded up, and Tennessee, of course. It's blasphemous that Auburn's just below Alabama because I don't know what they're seeing about this Alabama team that makes them better. I don't think they went that hard in the portal to improve that much from what they were last year. So I'm just not that high on Alabama. It's not because I hate them. That could play a factor into it. But I think overall, I think Auburn is better than Alabama this year in basketball.
I'm not ready to say that just yet. Alabama did have a lot of turnover. And to an extent, with these portal guys, you're always taking a chance. So you really just got to get the ball in the hardwood and get some conference games going to really see what you got, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I will say it does help my case for Auburn, the fact that Auburn has a specific player who is one of college basketball's best power forwards / centers, and the best at his position, and that is Johni Broome, who was put on the All SEC first team for this year. Johni Broome is on pace right now to have a very, very great season, and hopefully going to be in the NBA after this year. But if he wanted to stay another year, I wouldn't say no, just because Johni Broome is really, really good at the basketball. But yeah, Johni Broome is SEC first teamer for the preseason, and more than likely going to be one for the postseason as well, along with some other Tigers as well. But Daniel, with the season so close that you can almost taste it, which player are you most excited to watch this season?
I've got to go Denver Jones. As soon as he announced he was transferring and that Auburn offered him and that he had scheduled to visit Auburn, I was super high on this guy, super high on his film. A native of the state of Alabama up in the Huntsville area. I like this guy a lot. Real good guy, has a great head on his shoulders, and is just immensely talented. He can shoot, he can get to the rim, he can rebound. There's just really 6'2", athletic as they come. He is going to be a problem for teams this year, and I'm just super excited to watch him cook.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you always love supporting the Auburn feeder schools. Auburn picked up Denver Jones from FIU, and then picked up Bravado Fairweather as well. So feeder schools going strong. And don't forget, North Texas over there also gave us 2 guys as well from the same sport. But yeah, if I had to pick a player, I'm going to go with the guy who has the most offseason hype than any other player on this team outside of probably Johni Broome. I'm going to go with Chaney Johnson. From what I've been hearing, this guy can jump through the roof. And I believe every single person who was at SEC tip-off yesterday said that exact same thing. Just confirming that this man can jump. And I am excited to see that. He can also shoot the rock as well. Chaney Johnson is going to be an electric player who Bruce Pearl even came out and said he might be the top player in his position in the SEC either this year or next year. And I think there's a good chance we might see that this year. Because I just think Chaney Johnson is going to be absolutely electric to watch in Neville Arena. And a couple other guys that I would say as well probably deserve to be an honorable mention. Aiden Holloway, I think, deserves a little bit of hype towards his way. Johni Broome even came out and said, and I quote, "Aiden, he's electric. He's special. When he crosses half court, you better have your toes on the logo." I mean, these newcomers, I'm going to say this knowing that it could be a hot take, but this incoming class for this season could end up being one of Auburn's like best overall recruiting cycles in basketball. Because I think that Bruce Pearl just found a way to not only reload at every position, but get better at every position. And that's why I'm so high on this Auburn basketball team. I mean, you got Denver Jones, Chaney Johnson, and as I'm saying that, I'm blanking, Chad Baker Mazzara, and of course, Aiden Holloway as well, just kind of really hyping him up. And just this season, I can't not bug a little bit for Auburn basketball, strictly because that's what happens whenever Auburn football breaks my heart. I'm like, all right, well, I can't be delusional to football anymore. Time to move on to a different sport. So basketball, time to get delusional for Auburn basketball. And that's where I stand on the matter. And this week, if you are in the Auburn area for this weekend, I would highly suggest heading over to watch some of Auburn's other awesome athletic events that they have going on this weekend, all in Auburn. Soccer is going to take on LSU on Sunday at 4:00 p.m. Then you have volleyball is going to take on Missouri on Friday at 6:00 p.m. And they'll also be taking on South Carolina on Sunday at 1 p.m. And then lastly, equestrian will be competing against number 6 Georgia on I did not write the time for that. That's embarrassing. Give me uno momento por favor. Where is it? They'll be playing on Friday at 3:00 p.m. So if you're tailgating in the Auburn area and you look for something to do in Auburn, you got 4 events right there alongside Auburn football. So hopefully Auburn can go 5-0 during the weekend. That's a big hopeful. But if you want the most likely win out of those, Auburn equestrian, but second most is definitely going to be Auburn volleyball back to back, and I think those are going to be more on the high end. Auburn soccer, I would love it. I would love if they could win their game against LSU. But the offense just has not been there for the soccer team. Defense was really good against A&M, but can it translate over to LSU? So, with all that being said, though, Daniel, let everybody know can love you, find you, support you, read your work, all that jazz.
You can find me over on Twitter or X at Daniel J. Locke.
One day you'll get a first try.
Do what?
That one day you're going to get a first try.
Yeah, I had a little streak going, but it's okay. You can find my written work over at 1819 News, the Auburn Daily, or Braves Today. Got a lot of cool stories coming out this week. All of Ole Miss coverage all day on Saturdays. So whatever you need, Auburn sports related, I got you covered.
Yep. And of course, I'm Dylan Larck at your boy the Tank on Twitter/X. Just right there at your boy the Tank at YABOI the Tank. And of course, you have on Instagram at Dylan Larck at DYLANLARCK. And on Choice Days, you can listen to my play-by-play for Stanhope Elmore on their SCHS media page whenever they have home games. So check it out there. Show some love to me in the comments just because I'm doing some hard work over there, starting up a student-led news organization for Stanhope. And, of course, if you want to follow us here on the College Loop, you have us literally everywhere, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, the works, all at the College Loop. And, of course, you have us, again, right here on YouTube, where you should like, comment, subscribe. Go ahead, leave your predictions for the Auburn-Ole Miss game. If you get it close, we'll put your name upon the show and congratulate you for knowing more ball than us. And just give any hot takes. So you want to start a quarterback, everything like that. And, of course, if you're tired of seeing our face, completely understand. Tar's not here, so you have a little bit of an easy breeze this video. But of course, if you want to listen to the show, you have us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and of course Amazon Music. And just to go listen to the show, make sure to like, comment, subscribe here, and go rate the show 5 stars there or whatever it is on the other platforms. But of course, everything and all of that being said, this has been the College Loop Podcast.